charge for being official. Because if we ain't, nobody will be. Is this on? This thing on?
I thought she was here. Where?
She was here. Did she leave? No, her stuff's still there.
No, she's not.
Oh, okay. But he's been there. All right. Okay. Are we ready? Okay. Good afternoon. Call the meeting back to order. And in order of the assigned committee reports, I would ask Trustee Reed to present the Audit and Compliance Committee report.
Thank you, Trustee Lawston. And to fellow trustee members, the Audit and Compliance Committee had two action items. First was the approval of minutes from November 7, 2016. Meetings were approved, and acceptance of the audit report. And this is the audit report of the IT compliance with the BOG Regulation 3.0075, requiring that universities have appropriate and auditable information security controls in place, a comprehensive information security plan, and a dedicated staff member to oversee the information security program. Vice President Givens presented the report, which included findings for not notifying the BOG of the Information Security Manager appointment, not having an Information Security Plan annual review, and the Information Security Plan not addressing the required elements of the BOG regulation. The audit concluded that the controls and processes which Florida A&M University has in place to ensure compliance with Florida Board of Governors Regulation 3.0075 needed improvement. Management has developed a comprehensive corrective action plan to address each of the above observations. All observations, according to management's corrective action plan, will be corrected during the period from March 2017 to October 2017. We also had several informational items. The first was an implementation of compliance and ethics program. This was an update of the new BOG regulation requiring universities to implement a compliance and ethics program. The university has implemented a compliance program, but will need to make enhancements to the program to conform to the BOG regulation, which is more comprehensive than the program that we currently have in place. A timeline for implementation was provided, and the initial annual report is to be presented to the board in June of 2018. We also had an update on the operational audit. And this was from the Auditor General's operational audit for the period April 2015 through June 2016 was provided. There were 10 findings. 2 were high impact, 2 had moderate impact, and 6 low impact. And corrective action plans are being developed as we speak to correct those items. Follow-up audit findings. The Division of Audit Compliance process for follow-up of audit findings was presented. And there was also an update on the external audit of the Rattler boosters. The firm Ernst & Young has been hired to perform an audit of the Rattler boosters. However, progress has been delayed as a result of the booster organization transitioning to new leadership and currently has inadequate administrative staff. A meeting with the booster treasurer has been scheduled to obtain the records for the audit, and that is starting to progress well. Work plan update. The work plan included 10 audits. Of the 10, 3 have been completed, 5 in process, and 2 have not been started. In addition, 3 management requests are in process, several investigations have been completed, and others are in process, and the follow-up work was performed. That concludes the report for the Audit and Compliance Committee.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, we have one item coming from your committee to the consent agenda, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will have Trustee Mills provide the Budget and Finance Facilities Committee report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget and Finance and Facilities Committee met on March 7th, 2017. The March meeting agenda included approval of 1 consent item, and 1 action item, and 7 informational items. The action item included the approval of the auxiliary facility income and expenditure statement. Interim VP Ford provided a presentation of the required statements, and the item was approved by the committee. It is therefore recommended that the Board of Trustees approves the income and expenditure statement for housing and parking services. The information items, the Budget and Finance and Facilities Committee also heard presentations on 7 informational items consisting of facilities capital project updates, facilities priorities, space utilization, financial budget update, and multi-year budget process. Quarterly update on cost savings. Quarterly update on cost savings, structural model on succession planning, and information regarding the food service vendor contract. A presentation on the information items provided meaningful dialogue and suggestions for follow-up as noted. For the CAST project, information on the percentage of student space will be further reviewed. For space utilization, the amount and quality, thanks to Trustee Reed, of available space will be identified. For the Mets food vendor agreement, suggestions and comments will be considered in determining next steps regarding the early renewal of the agreement. And budget reports will be distributed to the board on a monthly basis. Okay. And just as a quick pause to the report here, what you were passed out earlier is a draft, draft of what this monthly budget report will look like. Not to take a lot of time today, but I'd love for you to sort of look over it, see if there are suggestions and feedback from what we've focused on here. What I asked you to focus on is form versus substance at the moment, because it is a draft, although the numbers are relatively close. I should also highlight to you that the university does not currently, nor does its system support monthly budgeting. So while we're going to be looking at a budget on a monthly or financials on a monthly basis, understand that one of two things will happen. One is that you'll have a monthly budget, which is basically an annual budget divided by 12. And what the team is trying to do now is actually look at historical actuals to understand if there's any seasonality associated with numbers, and then apply that to the budget. So if we happen to spend more in April, May, June, historically, then next year, and again, the focus really is on how do we get to next year's budgeting process. We'll sort of follow that. And then what you also see is this is divided between what we consider sort of operating income or revenues over expenses on an operating basis. And then there's these sort of other items that are sources and uses of cash that we might have on this one report. Okay. So without any questions or comments from my chairwoman or others from the committee.
I just had one question.
Yes.
And it's really for all of us on the committee. And that is the food service contract. And who's on point for that, and who's providing us with what the options are? Because we've seen what the other universities have been able to do with their food service vendors in the form of equity in the agreement that we've not been able to extract out of our current agreement. So who's really kind of the lead person for that?
Mr. Chair, I welcome your question on that. That will actually be coming before the board at the June meeting as an action item.
Okay.
I think the only other note that I'd make, and thank you, Vice Chair, for the committee for taking the reins on this. The only other note is that we will have a bi-weekly report related to all P3 projects. You've just received the first one. You'll continue to see that update because, it speaks to accountability of this committee and making sure we get to the finish line with these projects.
One other question. As we move into the BOG meeting this week, we had some discussion about where our project sat when we were in Lakeland. Are we still in the same place in their pecking order, or did we?
I will tell you that as a status update, we have had ongoing meetings and we have a great collaboration now with the Board of Governors staff. They were very instrumental in identifying what were perceived as gaps and or questions and allowing staff to address it. We have collaboratively come up with that timeline. They have reviewed the timeline that you all are now seeing on a bi-weekly basis, and we will continue to engage them. We have a set meeting schedule, or reoccurring, if you will, and we will continue that relationship with all projects going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Mills and Trustee Moore. Next, we will have our Direct Support Organization Committee. Trustee Dortch, you're recognized for your report.
Thank you, Chairman. The Vice President Cotton is not with us today. He's recovering from flu, and we made it clear that we didn't want to share in his discomfort and pain, and so he is not here. But but here in support is, of course, our Associate Vice President Michelle English, who's here for any technical support or questions that may come. And again, from the DSO committee's report and from Vice President Cotton, and you should have your reports there. A snapshot was presented on fundraising. Current giving is at 5.2 million in cash contributions. The same period last year, approximately 4.9 million had been raised in cash donations and pledges. The average gift amounts to date is about $1,887. The division anticipates receiving before the end of the calendar year 3 million in pipeline gifts. And just a reminder, some had asked with the report last year around the 6 million plus, there were some trustees that thought in his report about the 6 million plus that included a 5 million gift from one person. That gift was a million a year for 5 years, so it was not the majority of that money, but it is a million a year for 5 years from that pledge. Planning and assessment updates. The staff is in communication with Vince Whaley Fleshner, the national fundraising capital campaign firm the university commissioned back in 2010 for the first and only feasibility study. And we have a copy of that study for you. It should be, if it's not in your packets, I'm going to ask if they'll bring that forward so each member can have it. One of the questions I had was how fresh was the basis for this capital campaign. So you'll get a copy of that. It hasn't changed much. The consultant's preliminary recommendation is to prepare a new feasibility study due to the amount of lag time since the original assessment in 2010. Institutional changes and variations in fundraising philanthropy landscape. After much discussion, staff was charged with providing as much detail as possible to provide the board a comfort zone regarding the campaign. Details such as cost, budget, findings from the feasibility study, and what the bridge is and so forth. And of course, I wanted to make sure our president was comfortable in tune with this. So, and I did have a very good conversation with Dr. Robinson and invite him if at any point he wants to make any comments surrounding the whole. It's $1 million campaign, and with a reach back, that really leaves us about a $80 million balance to raise. I don't know if Dr. Robinson will do anything at this time.
Thank you, Chairman Deutsch. I do just want to tell you that it's actually 100 million.
I meant 100 million. Well, that's $100 million. Sometimes you just count 100 million like a million. $100 million
Thinking of
campaign.
being bold, it is a bold, step out, but I think it's the type of challenge we deserve. The university is worthy of, and I think we'll put it all together to make it happen. I do agree that this is now 7 years old, probably 8 or 9. When you look at when the data was accumulated here, it's sort of time for a refresh on that, and that'll help guide us in as we launch this new campaign. Okay.
Very good, Dr. Robinson. So, review what's here, but I did ask Vice President Cotton if they can make sure we get an updated campaign readiness report. And so they are working, and the staff are working on that. And again, and I made it clear that it was important to us that Dr. Robinson had to have his sign of approval, a stamp of approval, coming from the group so that he has a comfort zone, because we know in terms of this campaign, the president has to play a very critical role, as does all of us, and so that is going to be done. And when Dr. Robinson signs off on it, it'll come back to our committee, and then from our committee, DSO committee, it'll come back to the full board. So they're doing a refresh on that. The next is the National Alumni Association. In terms of that was the foundation, the National Alumni Association, again, recruitment initiatives. The Office of Alumni Affairs has been assisting the Division of Student Affairs in the organizing and recruitment efforts. A few events have been hosted by the FAMU board chairman, of course, and several trustees. And we've announced those. We've had those in Jacksonville, Atlanta, Gainesville, and Interim President Robinson has made several presentations throughout the country, and he joined our student affairs team on the nation's largest recruitment fair. You heard a little bit about that in LA. Alumni engagement. Office of Alumni Affairs helped organize Houston alumni to welcome Dr. Robinson's visit to Houston, Texas for Super Bowl weekend. Organized DC chapter alumni who welcomed Dr. Robinson to our nation's capital in preparation for his historic visit to the roundtable of HBCU presidents. Handled logistics for the Polk County chapter scholarship gala and has worked with dedicated groups for 3 years. And you heard about their fulfillment of the $100,000 scholarship endowment and there in Lakeland, Florida. Helped organize the Florida Regional Conference held at FAMU College of Law. And by the way, that was again a very good and a great opportunity for us to sit and dialogue with the alumni. I think it's one of the best things we could have done, and really I want to commend all trustees who continue to go travel and spend time with our alumni association. And the FAMU Foundation is handling logistics for the Legacy Banquet in support of FAMU athletes. The banquet will be held in the Lawson Center March 30th at 7 p.m. You should have a flyer in your packets with the information about that. So it looks something like you got your tickets too. So I want you to make sure that you put that on your consideration list for this Thursday. Upcoming events, Friday, March 31st, the plaque unveiling at the Eternal Flame. Alumni honorees are Miss Lisa LeBou, Mr. Hubert Reddick, posthumously, Mr. Of course, John Ward and Mrs. Arnett Scott Ward, and the FAMU National Alumni Polk County Alumni Chapter. Thursday, April 6th, FAMU Day at the Capitol was mentioned earlier. Those who can make it, be great to be there and walk the halls. Friday, April 7th, Chairman Kelvin Lawson to speak at the Brevard Alumni Chapter Banquet. On May the 13th, Trustee Dave Lawrence will speak to the Broward County Alumni Chapter in Miramar, Florida. And Saturday, April 8th, Dr. Robinson will deliver the keynote address to alumni in Mariana, Florida. April 27th through the 29th is the weekend of rededication, celebrating the class of 1947, 57, 67, and 77. So keep those dates in mind. Dr. Robinson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could just briefly note that in terms of those recruitment initiatives, in addition to the cities you mentioned, trustees also hosted events in Orlando, Miami, and Gainesville. Trustee Woody worked along with the Alachua County chapter of the NAA to organize an event there, and those all went over extremely well. So I want to thank the trustees personally for being part of our recruitment efforts. Those of you, you know how important this is to us, and I thank you for stepping up and providing your time and resources to make these happen. Also, if I want to note that I got a text message from Reverend Holmes just today indicating that the Legacy Banquet is approaching $200,000 in fundraising. So
Very good.
So that's not.
Yes.
That's good music. The FAMU Foundation Inc. legislators requested foundations of the state university system to provide clarification on data submitted to the Florida House of Appropriations. FAMU received positive accolades. The spring 2007 FAMU Foundation Board of Directors meeting will be held May 24th through the 26th in Baltimore, Maryland, in conjunction with the FAMU National Alumni National Conference in Baltimore, May 25th through the 28th. 3 new members were elected to the FAMU Foundation Board, and the foundation recently elected Common Fund as its investment manager. And last but not least, the FAMU Foundation's endowment currently stands at $120 million. The FAMU Rattlers Booster, the much talked about event. The Rattlers Booster Board met February 25th in Orlando, and joining, of course, was myself, A.D. Milton Overton, and the Boosters Executive Director nominee for the Booster Club, the boosters report that many productive meetings have occurred since November 2016 to March 2017. I want to again commend Dr. Robinson, Vice President Cotton, and our AD Milton Overton. They have been working extensively, and now the board has taken more of an active role. Members of the board of directors, and we are seeing a lot of results. I still must report that our auditors are still having quite a bit of difficulty in getting documents from the former administration. They're working to try and get the audit completed, but I do think now that from all the work with the board now taking a very active role from the booster, I see nothing but positive things happening, and there are some administrative approaches, Mr. Chairman, to the Board of Trustees that we think we're on the right track to make a lot of things happen, and the booster will be is actually in compliance on one other requirement for their existence. Their now accounts are set up in the foundation. There are no dollars to come in unless it comes in through the foundation, and Dr. Robinson is working with Vice President Cotton to provide them technically a loan exec that they have requested because they are challenging, which will help them to raise resources for the university. And when they raise dollars, that benefits FAMU because we now will have an appropriate accounting system in place to make sure we don't have the problems of the past. And again, it was a very good and very productive meeting with the board in Orlando. So I can report to you that there are some great and positive things happening, and also an accolades to AD Overton to clear up one misstatement. He had requested documents of everybody who had paid previously. All those documents were not presented, but anybody who presented themselves and said they had paid, our athletic director did honor them by making sure they did the fulfillment of the obligations to them as booster members. And if they provided checks or anything, they did work. And so we see positive things that are happening there from the Rattler booster. And I will keep you posted, and our committee will be meeting with them as we go. New business, two new items came before the committee. One, the intellectual properties management and control. Staff is to educate and activate a plan that patrols and ensures licensing agreements are enforced. We discovered there is a license agreement in place, but our concern from the DSO committee was that there was not stringent enforcement. And our concern was the image of Florida A&M University because our trademarks are being used in multiple ways, and so we said it's got to comply, it's got to be tasteful, it's got to be something that represents Florida A&M University, and so the charge back to the foundation and to the athletic directors for them to meet with the company that has a license agreement and tell them that they must enforce it, and that the university is going to take extra steps, Dr. Robinson has said, to make sure that our intellectual properties are protected and our images are protected. The other thing, again, from the DSO is that the FAMU Foundation team wants to do an orientation for the board of trustees. And I think it's very important. Our chairman did appoint our representative to the foundation board, but one of the things that we need to all understand is how they operate. And as I mentioned, we can brag about $120 million, but we all need to know what it is, how it's formatted, and the process, and how those funds are being used for the benefit of Florida A&M University. And so Ms. Linda Barge Miles and Vice President Cotton will work with their team to work with to request from our chairman a time that we can get a comprehensive orientation so that we will understand completely how the foundation is operating, and we'll have, again, a better understanding of what it is doing in support of the university. Mr. Chairman, this concludes our report from the DSO committee.
I just had one follow-up question from the actual committee meeting. Going back to the $100 million campaign, one of the topics that we talked about was what are the financial and people needs in order to raise that type of money?
Yes.
So do we have a date when we will be able to?
We need to impose a date for them to have that into us. We did ask for that as part of the understanding and with Vice President Cotton. Now, let me ask again, Michelle is there. Has that been completed yet, Ms. English?
Good afternoon.
Good
The
afternoon.
feasibility study, we have not commissioned. We've gotten an estimate what it would cost to create a new feasibility study. The feasibility study that was handed out a little bit earlier is 7 years old. Even though it's 7 years old, some of the data is still very relevant. And we were advised that instead of updating this plan, create a new plan. But we have not officially entertained the previous consulting firm that we used back in 2010, Bentz Whaley Fleshner. We've just had a conversation with them as to the timeline and the cost to do a new feasibility study. And one of the things that the new feasibility study will help is to clarify what the goal should be. Because I know there's been some discussion about $100 million or more, but using an outside objective opinion, we may be able to hone in on what is the best goal that we can accomplish for the campaign.
So, and I know that there were 3 fundraising heads in the strategic plan proposal. So is it, do you think you guys will be ready by June or maybe the next meeting beyond June to be able to share more of the plan?
Well, according to VP Vice President Cotton, his goal is to have ramp up the staffing by July 1, but have conversations with everyone prior to that as to our budget needs. Obviously, as the budget increases, we will increase the staffing as well, especially for the gift officers.
I think in line with what the chairman's asking, we need to know the budget that's projected to conduct the campaign, which would include the update on the feasibility study. And to my colleagues, the process is the foundation board has voted, but under the process, it must come to the DSO committee. DSO committee must vote to recommend to the full board to approve it, and then once the full board acts, then they can launch it, but they cannot launch this campaign without final, as I understand the process, without final sign-off from the Board of Trustees.
Correct.
I think Dr. Robinson had something he wanted to add.
No, I just want to caution everyone, the accolades that FAMU received when we presented to the legislature recently regarding expenditures in the foundation was due to the fact that was something around 30% of our funding expenditures from the foundation went to support students, and that was a much higher number than was typical in SUS. That's why we received accolades. However, on the other hand, there was a lot of concern about the funding of individuals who worked in foundations in general to raise monies that otherwise were not necessarily going to support the institution, sort of back to your point. And so right now, what we saw in the House budget that came out, some of those positions that were eliminated, I understand, were individuals who were, in those capacities. And so those 3 individuals that are in that strategic plan now is going to be tough in this current environment to fund those out of E&G dollars.
Trustee Moore had a
Yeah, just 2 points, 1 point and 1 question. So we were talking about a timeline in terms of when the firm numbers would need to be available. Well, they'll have to be available before June, because one of the things that we asked for earlier were firm numbers with the strategic plan. So just a point there. And then the second is just a request, Trustee Dortch, tied to the committee. There's a vendor list that I requested from VP Cotton, and he has provided it. I wondered if you could put action towards that. And the vendor list, of course, some of you that were at the workshop and strategic planning meeting, got that. It's a list of all the vendors that the university is working with, and looking at that as potential low-hanging fruit for going out there, looking at resource development.
Very good point. I'd asked Vice President Cotton to give us a report on the vendors versus their giving to the university. And you're right on, spot on there, because individuals should make a living off our institution and not invest in our students. While we don't make that a condition for them to do business, but it should tell us
Right.
their commitment to the university. So if you remind Vice President Cotton, we need that
I
so
will.
we can share with the board. And right, that should be one of the starting points, not only there, but with us individually, but with those vendors. So that'll be important. If we can get those in again before this whole campaign can be launched, it must have the completed process of sign off by the board of trustees. So we need to get those expedited, and then I assume at this point, then it'll be the June board meeting, unless the chair has to call a special meeting, if the president asks the chair to call a special call, whether it's telephonic, to make sure they're on target. 'Cause we don't want to miss the window of opportunity. While there are a lot of great things happening, we want to capitalize on those.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes our DSO
Thank you.
committee, unless there are any other questions.
No other questions? Then Trustee Dorcher is still up to present the
Okay.
outcome of the Presidential Review Committee.
The Presidential Review Committee report is as follows. The committee did meet on Tuesday, March 28th. And did meet on yesterday, March the 27th. Had a very good meeting. And what I remind each of you, if you look at the beginning, the charge of this committee in September, this board voted to have a committee that would begin to review again what we would be looking for in terms of a permanent leader. And that, I'll just, for the record, the committee will work on a proposed structure and procedures for selecting a candidate to serve as president of Florida A&M University. It will create a profile for the position and create a process. That committee would be charged with helping the board understand the process that should be followed and the type of candidate the board should seek for the presidency. The committee would also hold a series of meetings with stakeholders of the university constituents to gain their input. And so, in keeping with that charge, and to make sure that our stakeholders, meaning our students, our faculty, our alumni, and our community of support, that they understood that we wanted them to be engaged, involved, and we consider them as very important parts of this university. We have worked to proceed the committee to proceed with that charge. I want to, at this point, ask our chairman if Chairman Lawson, during our discussion, he discussed several things. As we said, we wanted to have a structured process so that we can gather information, we can make sure that individual voices were heard, and we came back with a comprehensive report that this committee reports back to the Board of Trustees. And for the record, this is not a search committee. We are a committee that has been charged with creating a framework for guidance for the board. And Chair Lawson did share with us some thoughts. Each of you should have received a document electronically that gave some options for you to delve on. I think that may have been, was it you, Trustee Carter, that asked for more?
Trustee McCoy.
Trustee McCoy did on the call, asked for more detailed information. And so with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to the chairman of the board, and you should have those documents that were received. But again, this is all about a framework, and for us to, more than anything, to hear what all of the shareholders of this great university, what they have and what their thoughts are, and of course, gain input about us. I think that's important for us to understand as we move in our governance roles, what they think we are doing right, what we should be doing, and what they'd like to see us do. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, having sat through this process before, that is going through a full-blown search and also selecting an interim president before, what I found that didn't happen is that there wasn't a full-blown process, nor was there complete agreement on what the skill sets, attributes were of the person we wanted to be our president. And I think anytime that happens, it leads to a challenge for that leader as well as for the board. So what I'm recommending to the board is that we follow a proven process that will allow us to determine the skills, attributes, backgrounds, qualities, characteristics of the person we individually want to be our next permanent president. The process is fairly straightforward. Each of us will provide detailed input into what we believe is most critical in a one-on-one session, so it's unbiased, unfiltered. The current interim president will also be interviewed to get the same information, as well as we will set in motion public forums with alumni, faculty, Dr. Grable, students, to really gain the input from what's most important to all of those constituents, put that into an overall leadership model that will allow us to do three things at the end of the process. Well, potentially more than three, but the three that come to mind are: one, we could decide that we want to go and conduct a full-blown search using this as the framework by which we select an individual. Two, we can continue to evaluate, or we can evaluate Dr. Robinson versus that framework, because we will also be very close to the end of having the formal performance review done that we've set in motion already. Or three, we can say we don't need to wait that long. We've seen the framework. We see what we have in action here, so we can make an earlier decision. But it gives us a structured, disciplined approach with a very finite set of characteristics and qualities and performance expectations by which we can evaluate a future president. And it's a tried and true process that's been used to select CEOs of major organizations across the country. And it's not a process run by us. So we provide objective input into the process. Then the leadership profile is developed based on our individual interviews, as well as interviews with other key leadership around the university. So I feel like it's fair, it's objective, but it allows us to put a process in place by which we can decide to go down a number of different avenues at that point.
And Mr. Chair, if you will review the document you received, we actually would be looking at phase 1 and 2 of that document, not an extensive piece where they do personal interviews and all that. So it still would need to be negotiated. Phase 1 would be the phone-based interviews with all board members, draft, review, and develop the winning formula profile for the target role. And you see a fee that they placed there. They placed 20,000, which we still I would expect that we're going to try and negotiate that one. And then phase 2, of course. And let me say that whatever we do, we'll have to comply with the regulations set by the Board of Governors and the Chancellor's Office, and by policies for the university and retaining consultants. And also want to make sure, for the record, we will comply with all requirements. And phase 2 would be consultation with the board on methods of data collection, conducting webinars and focus group, facilitating meetings, conducting surveys to collect data from alumni, faculty, foundation, and student representatives, debrief the board to discuss the additional input, finalize the winning formula profile. That would be the two items that would be recommended that we get, and whether it's from the proposed consultant or any consultant, these are the main pieces that we think will help us have organized information gathering, and we can be very strategic in how we go and be very organized, and it's not a helter-skelter approach to us in this process. That would be, and one other thing I want to add before I formally place the motion. The committee suggests that the board needs to establish a committee budget, and they also indicated that the current interim president would not be eliminated from the process. And those were the recommendations coming from the committee. And Mr. Chair, I move that the board retain the service of a consulting firm to guide us through this process, and with the recommended parameters from the committee.
Second the motion.
Well, I think does this move to the consent agenda, or do we can literally take a vote on it now? Okay. Questions?
Just a
I'm
quick
sorry.
question.
Yes.
I thought I read somewhere that there was a information on the kinds of placements or of that RHR has done and for whom.
Yeah.
Where would I find that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we put that in the packet, but we can definitely provide that because they've done major health system CEOs, they've done university presidents, they've done corporate CEOs, et cetera. So we can provide you with
Okay.
detailed references on who they place.
Okay. It's just a name coming from this industry. It's not a name I'm familiar with.
Okay.
Yeah, same here.
Okay.
I think one of the questions we may want to answer, Trustee McCoy voiced yesterday, he wanted to know whether or not they had done any presidential searches, and if so, what schools.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm sorry, I want to just clarify one thing. We're not saying we're going to use these guys to conduct a search. They're just building the leadership profile. At that point, we can decide if we want to move forward. We can decide, we have a number of options we can decide, but they're just being contracted to build a profile and help us outline the process.
Mr. Chairman, have we named the company yet or business to do the
Yes.
do the initial?
Yes.
This is it right here.
So just to follow up to that statement, provided that you move forward with a search and you selected another person, you would require they follow this process.
They would
Somebody
only
else
use the
created.
leadership profile to measure the person against.
Gotcha.
Right. And there's probably some logic in using a different firm for the search, quite frankly, so that you get a more objective piece, back. But that's something we can decide at a later date.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Dave.
I wasn't here at the time, and I don't know what happened specifically, though I've read about it and heard a lot about it, about what didn't go well. This strikes me as having a heck of a chance to go well. It's slow, it's disciplined, we're in control of it. We're only talking about 2 phases starting off.
Yes.
Get those done, see what we have, and then we can decide where to go from there. I like this.
Thank you. Any other
Great.
questions? If there aren't any questions, motions are made and properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, Mr. Chair, the final thing that we have on the agenda, understand that we're establishing this process in order to ensure that we do not miss some very critical timelines, considering that the university is about to wind down for this school year, and the faculty senate only has one more meeting before the school year ends, and then the full general faculty meeting that comes on the 13th, and then of course with our student body, we have scheduled 3 intermediate sessions. One on April the 13th to meet with the general faculty, just to simply sit in and we will make sure there's a structured framework with them to understand that they'll be contacted and there will be surveys and all. That will be April the 13th at 3 p.m. here on campus. And also on April the 13th at 6 p.m. with the guidance by our trustee and student government president. At 6 p.m. will be a session with the student body to simply again start some preliminary dialogue similar to the framework we used in Orlando with the regional conference. And then on the 18th, because the faculty senate is a very critical body, we would have maybe not all of the committee, but have members of the committee here to meet with the faculty senate. And I would ask also, Mr. Chairman, if you can check your schedule for that date. We'll meet with the faculty senate on April the 18th. And then our last preliminary session, because again, meeting timelines, would be at the National Alumni Conference that will take place in Baltimore. And we have that for May 25th through the 28th.
Great. Thank you, Trustee.
And so those would be the start, and that concludes our report, Mr. Chairman.
I just want to say one more thing about the process that we took a vote on. This will be discussed with Dr. Robinson every step of the way and the way I've been thinking through this and working through this, I think it's critical because at this point, I don't have to tell you things are moving in the right direction. You all see that for yourself, but I think it's critically important because we want Dr. Robinson to be extremely informed throughout this entire process. So myself and/or Trustee Dortch will own the conversations to make sure that there are never any surprises. That's not the environment we're going to operate in, and we're going to operate in one of mutual respect. And we feel good about where we are, but we also need to ensure that we keep things moving forward.
And for the record, a couple months ago when we started having the conversation, I did, of course, make sure I called Dr. Robinson, because I know, first of all, trustees should never come on campus without the blessings of the president, knowing that we're on campus, and he was very encouraging that these sessions take place. He thought it would be important and valuable anyway, and so want to thank Dr. Robinson for his leadership in that point as well.
Chairman, I wanted to add something.
Sure.
I forgot, I didn't mention this yesterday, but I know we're approaching the end of the semester, but if we have an opportunity, I wanted to make an effort to engage the law school students in this process as well.
Oh, yes.
Because the forum that he mentioned that we're going to have on April 13th, that'll be on campus, but I don't want to leave them out.
Okay.
So I want to try and see what we can do in order to engage them.
And I did commit to Trustee Bruno that we would also figure out how to make sure we engage the students on the campus, and that may be similar to the faculty senate, where we'll ask maybe Justice Perry and maybe a couple members to go, and even our Trustee Bruno to go in a session. So that is, we want to be all inclusive.
And Trustee Mills.
And definitely Mills. Since I keep forgetting he's so global. I keep forgetting he's in Orlando.
Well, we said his name twice. He kept looking down.
He's in Orlando. I keep thinking, no, he's somewhere in the universe. But ask the three of them to take the leadership role in sitting with the law school students.
Good catch.
Just to add on to what Trustee Bruno offered, I think probably deploying technology to take into account our other satellite campuses makes sense as well, because we have students at other locations too. So if we're going to go that effort, then I think we need to be all encompassing.
Gotcha.
Guess we need to get with our.
Oh, I'm sorry. Justice Perry had raised his hand, and then
The one thing I want to add is I really appreciate the transparency and involvement of the board with information by all, including our interim president. A board cannot make sound policy decisions without having knowledge. And I have to compliment Dr. Robinson and his staff for doing that. And as you can see, the board is very engaged in the process and trying to find out everything we can about everything, so we can fulfill our responsibilities as policymakers. But we cannot do that without information, and Dr. Robinson has bent over backwards in communicating with the board, and it makes all of our jobs easier, even though we realize it's a daunting task that we face each and every day.
Thank you, Trustee Perry. Thank you for that remark. Yes, I'm sorry, Trustee Carter.
I was going to say that we're talking about the law school and being there physically. Maybe in response to Trustee Moore's concern, maybe technology folks can wire us into the other satellite campuses. And I think that would be a tremendous opportunity for them to know that they're important to us as well. So we don't want to leave any student behind.
Good call. Yeah, with Jacksonville, Crestview, and others. So, okay, thank you. At this point, there's been no further business to come before that committee. We will move to the Special Committee on Athletics. And unfortunately, A.D. Overton could not be with us today. So I'm going to ask our Vice President of Facilities to give us an update on one key item, and that is, where do we stand on the emergency repairs to the stadium for football season?
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you, Trustee Lawson. Good afternoon, trustees. And it is my pleasure to provide a quick little update on our stadium repairs project. So, as most of you are aware, that we want to complete our structural repairs necessary for our stadium before our first home game. So, to date, we have completed the design required for the structural repairs, and we have been working very diligently with our contractor and the design team. I really appreciate the collaboration between athletics, foundation, and the facilities, and would like to commend one of our team members, Mr. Craig Talton, for working with our contractors so diligently and working hard. So we have received the pricing from the contractor, and it would be a pleasure for you to hear that the number is about 391,000, so which is much better than what we had initially heard, about 622,000 total project cost.
Excellent.
So where we stand today is, as we speak, we are mobilizing the contractor to get started, and the contractor would be able to get started and begin the repairs by starting this end of this week. And the idea still is to complete all the repairs before the first home game, which is scheduled for August 26th. The substantial completion we are hoping to achieve is by end of July, but no later than first week of August or so. So that basically completes an update. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
Just one question. That's great to hear in terms of the overall pricing difference here. Can you give us some more insight into what's driving the significant change? I want to make sure that.
Yes, we have not, just to answer your question, we have not reduced any scope, and we have not really compromised any structural or safety or quality for the project. The initial estimate was based on before the design was actually done, and it was done by the structural engineer. But as we completed the design and as we worked very closely hand in hand with the contractor, there was a lot of back and forth between the contractor and the design team. They provided some options and what we could do, and that basically helped us get the price down.
Great, thank you.
Chairman, I have a question.
I'm sorry, Trustee Bruno.
Is there any visual? Is there any correspondence relating to the details that you're talking about in terms of?
We do have some drawings, but again, those are structural drawings which we were able to share with our contractor. But we'll be happy to offline share with you. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, did we answer all questions on the stadium? Okay. I want to give you just a brief update. Thank you, sir. Just a brief update on the athletic deficit conversation. We had our meeting last week with the Board of Governors, the Inspector General, Governor Link, President Robinson, myself, A.D. Overton, Ms. Ford, and the finance team. And we're pleased to report that our deficit for this academic year sits at $77,000.
Great.
Versus historically running at about $1 million per year. So compliments to A.D. Overton, Dr. Ford, President Robinson for his support. We're moving that number in the right direction. We realistically need to get to zero this year because we committed to the BOG that we wouldn't let the deficit grow. So we do need to get to zero. To honor that commitment that we made to the BOG. And the repayment plan against the $7.7 million is in process. We made the first payment to ourselves. It's kind of a unique model, but we made the first payment to ourselves from the foundation to auxiliaries to replenish those accounts. So that process is moving in the right direction. And again, that is what we agreed with the BOG that we would do. So the key for me is making sure that we follow through on those things that we said we would do. And so far we are. So thank you, Ms. Ford and team. With that, I believe at this point we are ready to go to the Strategic Planning and Performance Measures Committee. Trustee Washington.
Chair. So earlier today, the Strategic Planning and Performance Measures Committee, we're going to have to find an acronym or something for that, met. The meeting was attended by all those on the committee. There were no action items for consideration. Vice President Eddington provided updates on 2 items, the new strategic plan and performance funding metrics. With respect to the strategic plan, the committee was provided updates on the preliminary budget, possible sources for funding, and the timeline for completion. The strategic planning work group will prioritize budget items, further refine the costs, and over the next few weeks. And then we will present the draft plan to the full board for a vote, anticipated for the June meeting. With respect to performance funding, the committee was provided updates on FAMU's preliminary results and ongoing efforts to improve FAMU's performance on the metrics. Mr. Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you said we have a $77,000 deficit
In athletics, yes.
in athletics. I think we ought to get 77 people to give 1,000. I know Justice Perry and Dr. Robinson is giving his. I'll do 1,000.
You put me down for 1,000 too.
I'll go high if I have to, but I think we ought to just.
Well, I think we have a big fundraiser Thursday night.
That's good, but I think we should show some leadership, and I think we ought to ante up to start. I'll do 2,000.
Already did it.
You want to go around it? Well, I put 1,000 in last meeting.
Yeah,
I'll give 1,000.
Well, I'm paying my $5,000 pledge, which is now down to $1,200.
There we go.
You guys should jump on that anytime you want to.
Obviously, not be to put anybody on the spot, but I think that the magic is we want to be a part of the solution, right? So we're going to put our own dollars against this to help make this a reality. And we joke with Milton a lot on these calls, but he has done a nice job in organizing and bringing this down. So what I'd like to do to keep this meeting moving is move to the consent agenda.
Okay.
We've gone through all of the items. Next, let's move to the consent agenda. Trustees, is there anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda? Are there any items that need to be added to the agenda or any additional proposed changes?
Mr. Chairman, I move the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly second. Any question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Consent agenda passes. There were no items removed from the consent agenda, but I did have one item that I want to put on just as a discussion item, and it won't require a vote. And that is, I'd like to ask the provost to give us an update on the law school, because I think that there have been a lot of discussions about pharmacy and law as of late, and we did talk pharmacy. You put a lot of feedback on the pharmacy school, but I would like to get a brief update on where things stand with the law school.
Once again, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
One of the academic affairs, as we have in a number of our professional programs, have visited the law school. We have met with the leadership team. We've met with faculty. We've met with student leaders. We've also met with, I personally met with the staff at the law school. And we have, like we have at the other professional programs that we visited, we also created a survey that we've actually put up on the web, so that those who were not in attendance or were not inclined to comment would have an opportunity to comment. And so we put together, asked the dean to put together an action plan, which they have initiated. And again, it's similar to the action plans that we have prepared for the other professional schools. And she is currently, the dean is currently involved in inviting, I know Trustee Perry will be visiting the law school to have an opportunity to engage the law school in some of the concerns, and we will provide the same opportunity for others to do the same. I know that one of the concerns is the drop in the pass rates that have occurred, similar to what happened at the College of Pharmacy, and so what we partly was the result of there was a class that the graduates were able to take, that in which the fee was sort of embedded in their tuition. The Department of Education came in and prohibited that because it was a third party. It was a third party fee, and so what we've asked is, part of their action plan is to put together strategies in which how they will address that. They do have a course that they take, that students are taking, but it is, as you know, it is not a required course, a prep course for the exam. It is a course that it is optional. And what part of their action plan that we're asking them to develop, and that is how do you develop a strategy that that really takes into account the best interests of their students and the success rates. And so that's one of the action plans that we will be presenting to you in the coming months, and also a full action plan for and progress that's being made for the June meeting. And so I just wanted to sort of update you on that.
Just a quick question,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Open questions. I'm sorry. Yes.
Sorry. Is there any way we can have this plan by the June meeting? I mean, I can't imagine it
Yes,
takes months to put this together. So,
well, our objective will be not only have the plan for you by June, but actually to be able to provide you with indicators along the way so that you're not waiting to June to hear about what is being done.
so the
Yes.
plan will be completed.
Yes.
At least at that point, and
Exactly.
ready for execution.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Trustee Mills. Is there other?
Chairman, I'd like to hear from the dean if that's appropriate.
Is she here?
I think, is the dean still here?
She's back.
Okay.
Yes, she's here.
Would come forward, please. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How you doing?
I am fine. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been an honor to serve as Dean of the College of Law for the past 14 months. Of course, something that we are working on is the bar pass rate. I won't be satisfied until 100% of the students pass the bar. That's something very important. So we're going to continue to make efforts along those lines, but it needs to be a holistic type of approach. We're going to be reviewing our curriculum to make sure that it's the most effective that it can be. I heard the earlier discussion about the bar fee, which we no longer have, but something that we are looking at is a way to have diagnostics all along the students' progress towards graduation, which would be involving additions to the curriculum, which we can incorporate, and there would be a possible fee connected with that. But the company that would do that would, in the end, make available to students a bar prep course to make sure that they're doing that. Now, I must share that according to data that we have, 85% of our students actually do a commercial bar prep course, which is essential really to them passing the bar. So they go ahead and do that on their own, as well as we have the BEST program that is a kind of coaching, mentoring program that works with them from really the time they start law school. We start talking about the importance of the bar exam at different points along their career. We're going to do more of that. But the program focuses on the summer after they complete law school. Very intensive 10-week program to help them with the skills they need to pass the bar. Students who participate in that, 75% actually pass the bar the first time. One of the issues, though, is this is completely voluntary. They are alums at that point. There's nothing we can do to force them to do it, but we talk about it. We encourage them to do it. We make efforts to go to classes and encourage them to do that, have a big kickoff event so that they will participate in that, because that combines with their commercial bar prep course. We also have 3 voluntary, they're electives within our curriculum that are geared towards the bar skills: Florida constitutional law, Florida bar skills, and multi-state bar skills. Most of the students take those courses, and they are focused on, again, bar-tested subjects and skills that they will need to pass the bar. We're creating in the fall a program called Foundations. One of the issues we identified is needing to have the students do something before they start school in order to work on those same skills, because this isn't really something you can wait until they get through 3 years, then give them a bar prep program and the best, and they're going to pass. So we need to have something that spans through the curriculum. So we are creating a program, we're calling it Foundations because it gives them foundational skills, where they will, for 2 weeks prior to the actual kickoff of the semester, be immersed in writing, critical thinking skills, those skills that they need to approach the entire curriculum. We felt that we need to include all of the students in this. We did something similar the previous summer. Last summer, it was a 2-week program that was voluntary. The issue was with that was we identified 40 students who we felt critical that they attend that. It was voluntary. They got a personal invitation from the dean to come to that program, and we actually had 16 of them that actually took us up on that and came to the program. Those 16 have done well this semester, which gives us some indication that this will be something helpful to expand to the rest of the student body.
Thank you.
If there are any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I just had a few recommendations. And, first of all, thank you. You probably weren't prepared to come up in front of us today, so thank you. I know that, Provost Wright is working on the action plan, but I think with the law school, I'd love to see us, think broadly about where we want to take the school around enrollment, funding, faculty load, as well as, your work on your passage rates. And we've talked about this a few times before. So I'd love for us, when we come back together in June, maybe we can spend some quality time, looking at the action plan. But I'd like, unlike pharmacy, pharmacy, we were kind of focused specific on passage rates, right? But I think with law, there's some other things that I think we'd just like to get answers around. What's our enrollment strategy moving forward? I think we're down about 30% in enrollment, somewhere in that range. I may be wrong, but how do we work collectively to do all the things that you want to see us do around enrollment, fundraising, graduation rate, passage rates of the exams, placement of students, et cetera, clerkships, all of those things. I think we'd like to see more of a comprehensive plan around the law school, and I think it will give us just a greater understanding of all the things that you all are working on that you're probably very close to, that we, hear this, you hear that, you have to try and decipher fact from fiction. So I think it will help us just better understand where you guys are going. That might be my recommendation as we look at June.
Okay. My question is, how effective is your program in getting students placed as clerks or even doing internships?
Are you referring to after graduation or while they're in school?
Right while they're in school, before the graduation.
One of the things that the faculty worked on in the fall, and actually started last spring, was something called a field placement, also called externship program. We refer to it that way in law school. That actually needed to be approved by the faculty, which we finally did in November of this year. And now we need to get that also approved by the Faculty Senate so that we can actually start offering those opportunities to our students. That's something that I have heard consistently about. There are entities in the community that want our students to be out there getting that experience and fulfilling our service mission. And there's also a great desire among our students to actually participate in externships, because many of those things will lead to jobs.
Right.
Gives them the skills that they need, and also they're out there showing how fantastic they are, what they've learned in school, and that could lead them to a future employment. So we are working on those things. Right now, we're in the process of actually identifying somebody to manage that program. So this externship program contributes to meeting that accreditation goal as well.
That's good, because I know even when I was with the U.S. Senate, 60% of our staff came through internships or individuals who worked in our legislative division. And then I know a lot of the huge law firms that hire a lot of those externs who come in because they get a chance to see them, observe them, and even mold them to fit into their firm. And so I think that would be a win-win for the university and for the students and for the law firms.
And to our students' credit, they're awesome, of course, but many of them volunteer on their own for those very reasons. They're for us. To the associate dean of the law school and had a placement, and for a student that was too good to pass up. So we decided that this is how we do it. That only offers them a 6-hour opportunity. So we need our field placement program actually approved by the faculty senate in order to offer various options to the students of taking less hours and to create those variety of placements.
Do we know the timetable on that?
We were checking on it this week because, as was mentioned earlier, the last meeting for the faculty senate this year is coming up pretty quickly. So we need to get it on their agenda and follow that process, which I will admit I'm not familiar with exactly all the steps in that, but it is in the works right now.
I have one of your students interning with me. He's been doing it for a year. He has done excellent work. He was involved in a case with me that settled for $400,000. Did an excellent work product. And I had 2 more of your students wanting to intern with me, but I can only do one at a time. But I commend you for trying to get this program. I commend the faculty because those placements while they're in law school can lead to employment. They're very, very important. Without that, you cannot showcase your work product.
Thank you, Judge Perry. Trustee Moore?
Just one question for the dean, and it's related to the resources needed, because it sounds as if there's one step that speaks to the faculty senate's approval, but then I also heard that there's a staffing need in order to support the program to ensure that it's being ran properly.
That is correct.
And how will that be addressed? Because again, getting the approval is one piece, but then the staffing piece, do you have resources in place to address it?
Well, after some back and forth this semester, we do have both a line and the resources available to do that, and all of that has been submitted to the provost office. And there's some steps that we need to follow in order to get that out there. But I signed all the paperwork at the law school actually the end of last week, so that we can post the position and get someone into that. Possibly there was some internal as well as external candidates in our area, so we'll be able to get that up and running quickly.
And I just had, not related to the dean, but a question tied to curriculum, because it's come up twice today, both with pharmacy as well as with the law school now. President or Interim President Robinson, what's the standard tied to curriculum review? Because we talked about, or at least heard today, that it had been over a decade for the pharmacy program, and then there's some conversation now with the curriculum tied to the law school. So what internally is that review schedule?
Yeah, so internally, each college or school has a curriculum review committee. And they review it to ensure that it's consistent with the standards for their particular, and it's not just for the specialized accrediting bodies, programs that have specialized accrediting, but everybody does it. And I don't know if there's a set time for doing it, but we sort of do it this way. For specialized accreditation program, they have to do it consistent with their cycle of reaffirmation, right? For everybody else who doesn't have a specialized accreditation, we do what's called a program review. And a program review occurs at least every 7 years, unless that standard has recently changed. So within 10 years for most specialized accredited programs and 7 years for everybody else, all the curriculum ought to be reviewed by the faculty in those units. Now, the process that the dean alluded to is that any curriculum changes that are recommended by the internal curriculum committees in those units has to go through the curriculum committee of the faculty senate and then to the provost for final approval. But everybody on one of these times, depending upon whether you're specialized accredited or not, you got 7 years or whatever the standard is within your, specialized accrediting body, which is typically, 5 to 10 years. Okay.
And I'll be really quick on that, but I guess my question is tied to because apparently that is a driver. They've talked about it with the passage rate being impacted and that a decade had passed, that maybe even though that's the standard for the accreditation piece, but maybe our internal clock may need to be even sooner than that if we're to address what's changing within, with the pharmacy school. They talked about the test and making sure that it's a more timely process.
So I think that's a very good point, and I think what ought to trigger an off-cycle review is when something like that happens, when you
Right.
see or hear, and these things don't just happen overnight. You start hearing about them, but you
Exactly.
don't really know until somebody sits for the exam because they're not going to tell you, right? Okay, and so you still though have to be prepared to immediately assess whether or not the curriculum that you have is addressing the new standards that are being set forth. It's just like when Sachs, changed its criteria, we had to do this whole reassessment university-wide to make sure we were on target to meet those. But you don't, in some instances like Sachs, they will tell you we're changing standards X, Y, and Z, right? Having nothing to do with curriculum, of course. But for these standardized tests, you obviously they're not going to tell you, what the test is about necessarily, but they might tell you where some of the focus may be versus where it was in the previous iteration. So now you got to respond quickly. So that to me would trigger sort of an off-cycle curriculum
Right.
review. Okay, and that's what is happening in pharmacy. And I think we actually done this in the law school. I think what we did about 4 years ago, it looked at some of the areas that they were focusing in that didn't necessarily lend themselves to the students being successful on the bar exam. I think it was sort of international law as well as environmental. They still do those things in those nice places to have specialization. But I think that what we agreed to then is let's get our foundation together, firm setting with regard to high pass rates on the bar, and then we'll start to branch out more into these specialization areas. I think that's the strategy that we implemented 4 years ago around it when we were most recently reaffirmed by the Bar Association.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Trustee Grable.
Good afternoon, Dean Epson. Thank you for your extemporaneous presentation. I think the president did, of course, a very excellent job in explaining the process. And I noticed that it comes to the faculty senate. Actually, your curriculum changes once your faculty agrees that that is what they want to do. It actually goes to the university-wide curriculum committee before it comes to the faculty senate. And we have a monthly report of the curriculum committee on the faculty senate's agenda every month. So when Trustee Perry asked, where in the process was your change to the curriculum that needs to ultimately be voted on by the faculty senate? I guess the question I would have is still to ask that question again. Is it still within your school or has it been pushed along to the curriculum committee?
Trustee Grable, at our last faculty meeting, which was about a week ago, this subject came up, and at that time I learned it had not been moved forward. And so
Okay.
we began a conversation with our two faculty senators who were, I take that back. Senator Grant was present to
Yes.
figure out how we needed to move this forward. Because although we have a course on the curriculum that we can use that has been approved as an internship, it's been there for some time. Our issue with that was that it didn't meet the ABA standards in terms of how we were doing it. That offers students a 6-hour opportunity, which we can go ahead and use now that we have the faculty approved kind of structure for that. But the new courses would be the alternatives with fewer hours, because they can do this for 2 hours, they can do it for 4 hours, but those have never been considered. So Senator Grant was helping us with figuring out how that needs to move forward. Part of the issue here is you had the new kids on the block, both myself, I have a brand new associate dean, and it was something that just didn't get followed up on as it needed to, quite frankly, at the time.
Okay, so actually, the answer then to Trustee Perry's question is that it is still within your unit and not really waiting for the faculty senate. I don't think you said waiting, but you said it had to be approved by the senate, but it will never get to us unless it comes through the curriculum, university-wide curriculum committee. That would be the next stop that your unit then has to pursue.
Okay.
And I also wanted to add, and thank you for your answer, I also wanted to add that I'm aware of one of your students, Miss Alicia Parker, and she did, I don't know if it was an official externship, but she was extremely excited about her work in Australia, and that she went down there, did some work on international law, and she was a former journalism student. Several of our students consider law school, so I wanted to commend you all for making that opportunity available to her. She is so excited about that and is convinced that that is the direction she thinks she'll want to go. Thank you again for your hard work, and we appreciate you down at the law school.
Right. Thank you, Dean Epps. At this point, thank you. It was a great presentation, and I'm sure the dean wasn't completely prepared, but we will bring the dean and provost right back in June. Collectively, you heard the discussion, so I won't repeat that. For Linda, just for the sake of tomorrow, we need to be here at 1. Okay. And everything is in here, correct? Okay, great. So the agenda is posted on the Board of Governors website for those of you that will be around tomorrow and Thursday. And at that point, are there any other questions or any other issues that need to come before the board? Yes, Trustee Grable.
I just want to add an announcement that the Faculty Senate is working with the Advisory Council of Faculty Senate Presidents around the state. And at every Board of Governors meeting, the Board of Governor members, selected ones or ones who decide they want to attend a 7:30 breakfast with faculty members here at Florida A&M. And we had a very good discussion last year with the Board of Governor members. And we will be meeting down at the President's Dining Room at 7:30 a.m. on Thursday morning, along with the president of the Advisory Council of Faculty Senates. And we already have probably close between 7 and 10 faculty members. So it's a nice, cozy little group that gets to meet, and the faculty is able to bring up issues with the Board of Governors. But this year in particular, the governors have asked that we make sure we include members of the faculty from the FAMU FSU College of Engineering. They are interested specifically in understanding how that has worked out since that new agreement.
Oh, being creation
Yes.
of the Oversight Committee.
Absolutely. So we do have a faculty senator. He's going to bring someone else with him from engineering. And I wanted to say this because this is being broadcasted for faculty members who may, senators, received an email, but we are open to general faculty members attending as well. And I wanted to make sure the board members were aware of that.
Thank you. And Trustee Grable, I did want to say congratulations on your reelection formally as well.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Only the best.
Mr. Chairman, just for those of you who have not had an opportunity to attend the Board of Governors meeting, I strongly encourage it. However, I would like to note to you that they roll from one committee meeting to the next, right? I mean, you might see here a time of 1:30 for the Innovation Committee, but if the committee meeting prior to that ends early, they roll into the next meeting. So just be prepared that if you're expected for a meeting to start at 2, and the previous meeting ended at 1:30 without a scheduled break, the next meeting is going to start. Okay, and they're very efficient about how they use their time. And of course, that's because the chancellor does a much better job in his opening remarks than I do.
One last comment from Trustee George.
Mr. Chairman, I think to the pleasure of a lot of trustees I know in our Rattler Nation, A.D. Overton has signed the game again between Florida A&M University and Tennessee State, working under the guidance of our president and the A.D. and several other folks, including a lot of distinguished graduates. We're trying to finalize the place that should be coming out in the next week. Just to let you know, our challenge for Atlanta is not that we don't want to go there. It's we've been working to try and make sure we can get a venue, and we're working on that. Will Packer's involved with us as well, but the first step is done. We got Tennessee State and FAM on the books, and it will be played somewhere. So, and
You're always welcome in Orlando.
and for
Here, here.
but for 2018-19, I can tell you the athletic director, I think, is going to have everything in place for us to be back in Atlanta. But I just wanted to put that out. He has been lights out on it, and the president and I've had multiple conversations, got a little bit of everybody involved in it, but it's back.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that. With that said, there being no further business to come before this board, this meeting is adjourned.
It's on the agenda.
Look around.
Oh, you're getting some weekend time.
No, I've had more 7-day weeks in the last 2 months, but you know, I tell my child,
I saw a
figure it out.
You know, it's